Hey guys, so of course, one of the things that I'm best known for is my work with catcher ability, and of course, the importance of it in 22 is definitely something people will need to be aware of in order to most effectively set up their teams. So this video is going to be about catcher ability in Out of the Park 22. I'm going to be looking about how effective it is relative to what it was in 21, which players have it, how it's looking in general in the game, what your strategy should be with catchers, and basic catcher rankings as well. And while we're at it, I'm actually going to be going over catcher arm today as well. So I'm going to pull that up really quickly. And we're going to first take a look at catcher ability at Out of the Park 22 versus Out of the Park 21. So in Out of the Park 21, I measured exclusively walk and strikeout rates. You'll also notice that I have more data points collected for 22. But in general, we're looking at catcher ability here being actually even more important than it was in the previous version of Out of the Park. Or not more important, but about the same level of importance. You will notice that a lot of defense has had its importance decreased relatively to where it was in the previous game or adjusted, but catcher ability is pretty much the same. So once again, in Out of the Park 22, it's going to be incredibly important to pick up a high ability catcher. Definitely what you're going to prioritize at the position. Now with catcher arm, I have set up my league in a manner that will allow me to accurately measure the effects of catcher arm on your total defense. So we have here our stolen bases per 162 games and our caught stealing per 162 games, and its effect on runs per game as well. You'll notice here that runs per game is only minimally affected by catcher arm. It's still important, don't get me wrong. It's just not as important as catcher ability by a long shot. Right now, where I stand is catcher arm is nice to have, but should not be priority number one at the position. And you're definitely not going to be going out there for somebody just because of their arm. And with that, let's hop into Out of the Park Baseball, and I will pull up some players here as well as discussing what it looks like and what we're looking at for Out of the Park 22. So, actually, one of the things I've noticed is they have overall decreased the total defense of the leagues. Players are worse defensively than there were previously, but in Out of the Park 22, catchers are more, or high ability catchers are even more common than they ever were before, and your best catchers are even better than ever. So the team that I'm currently looking at for my catchers are the Cleveland Indians, where you can get both your starting catcher and your backup catcher. Austin Hedges is your starting catcher. He is, we're going to get to this in a minute, the best catcher in Out of the Park 22 right now by my metrics. It's completely subjective at this point, just to be randomly ranking players. It's a first draft ranking too, but Austin Hedges is number one right now. With that 80 ability and 75 arm, his defense is pretty much invaluable. The offense not too terrible either. He's going to give you a little bit of power and not kill you ultimately. He's going to be a bottom of the order hitter, but he's still very valuable as your starting catcher. And Roberto Perez is your backup right here, best backup catcher in the game. I have him ranked as the number 3 catcher overall, so picking up this battery will really help your pitchers out. He's got 80 ability, same as Hedges, and a 70 arm, so only slightly lower in that front. The offense might actually be slightly better overall. It's very similar, except the eye is significantly higher. Both are captains. They're going to really help out your team chemistry. And I'm really high on both of these players and Out of the Park 22. So, as for our catcher rankings, I'm going to quickly pull us back over to spreadsheets. And we have here my rough rankings for all catchers Out of the Park 22 that I consider relevant. I ended up ranking 101 catchers. 101 catchers! So, in order to qualify for this list, you must have at least partial training at catcher. So, players cannot be totally untrained. You must have at least 2 stars overall or 65 catcher defense. And if you happen to be below 2 stars overall, I'm willing to accept players who have either 1 star overall or 70 catcher defense as well. Or they would have to have both of those things, my bad. So that's a little bit of a mistype there. But yeah, I have 101 catchers ranked right here. Only one guy is below 2 star overall, I believe. Or only one guy has less than 1 star. And yeah, so what it is if you're below 2 stars, 65 catcher defense flies. But if you're a half-star player, you have to have 70 defense and 70 ability. A few things to note about this list. This is for year one, day one. Who is the best catcher heading in? So players' development is pretty much not taken into account here. And the future of that player, how affordable they are going forwards, how likely they are to improve or drop off in terms of their ratings. That's not taken into account. I'm going to make separate lists for long-term players and for prospects. So this is just who is the best catcher, who's going to win me the most games year one. And I have, of course, Austin Hedges, number one. His ability is just ridiculous. I did not really expect Real Muto to be so high, but they improved his defense to a place where I believe it is acceptable. And his offense is, of course, top shelf at the catcher position, so he currently slides in at number 2 on the rankings. Roberto Perez is number 3, great catcher as well, with his outstanding defense. Christian Vazquez, number 4 right now. He has a very good bat as well. Not quite Real Muto level, but very close. The defense is almost Real Muto level as well. Very nice defense from Vazquez. Yasmani Grandal, another pretty solid bat relative to the position, and he has some nice defense as well. Buster Posey's got some pretty top shelf defense, and he can hit a little bit as well. Very expensive, but if you could afford to take him on from the Giants, they'd probably be willing to throw in some nice prospects as well to make that happen. Salvador Perez sliding in at number 7. He's got some good defense and some bat as well. He's going to hit for power for sure. Sean Murphy, number 8 right now. Great catcher from the Oakland Athletics. He's probably the highest ranking catcher here that I would consider a viable long-term option for your very long-term games, as he is definitely high defense, pretty solid bat as well. Carson Kelly sliding in at number 9. He's got a pretty decent bat, also not a bad long-term option, but I would much prefer Murphy. He has some nice defense and won't kill you with the bat. Yadier Molina, same deal, very good defense, tolerable bat. Elise Sanchez, number 11. He is a Cardinals prospect that they'll give you for basically nothing. He is definitely a top tier catcher in his own right. Very nice defense and a decent bat. Mike Zunino's up here for his glove without a doubt. His offense is okay. He hits for some power, but he's essentially just a slightly better Austin Hedges with the bat. Martin Maldonado also got very nice defense ranking at number 13. Will Smith at number 14. His bat is carrying him here. This is probably the highest ranked offense first catcher, and I'm questioning if I've got him too high. He is very borderline for me. Danny Jansen is a defense first guy as well. Francisco Pena. Caleb Joseph, Tucker Barnhart also on that boat. James McCann has some glove, but it's mostly the arm, which I don't like as much, and he has okay hitting. We've got Cam Gallagher, Max Stassi, Austin Barnes, Thomas Dito, Reese McGuire, Jeff Mathis, and I believe Jacob Stallings, perhaps Bruce Maxwell, and Jason Castro as well, all up here purely for their gloves. Yeah, these guys. So the catchers I would consider MLB viable are everybody above Jeff Mathis. These are the only players that I would say are good enough to be your starting catcher. If you have anyone below this, they are a backup, and there is no excuse for not grabbing a good number of these guys because they are so cheap to pick up. Catcher defense very underrated in terms of how much it brings to your team by the OOTP trade engine right now. So there is no excuse for not picking up a Martin Maldonado or Mike Zunino or Elise Sanchez or Yadier Molina because they're just so cheap. Frankly, you should have your backup be a guy in the top 25 as well. Worst case scenario, just pick up Jeff Mathis from the Phillies, and there's your backup right there. He's also a captain, and yeah, he is really good. Lots of guys are viable options here. So for your really top end catchers, the only catcher that hits at all that I personally think is worth trading for under any circumstances is Christian Vazquez. He is not too highly valued by the Red Sox and very, very valuable as a catcher for you. If you desperately need some offense out of that catcher position or you're unwilling to take a terrible or below average bat, Christian Vazquez has got to be your guy. JT Realmuto, expensive both in trade value and actual contract cost. Vazquez is what I would call the cheap man's Realmuto, or more like the smart man's Realmuto, because there's really no reason to go for Realmuto over Vazquez. I would actually not consider Real Muto a viable option. If you're starting with the Phillies, you need to trade him away. If you're not starting with the Phillies, there's no reason to pick him up. There are plenty of guys on this list who can easily substitute for Real Muto who are better. Like Austin Hedges, I have him as number one catcher in the game right now. Why would you ever be playing Real Muto over Hedges? And why would you have Real Muto as your backup over someone like Perez, where he's going to be 20 million more a year? Yasmani Grandal, I also do not necessarily think is a viable pickup option. I think Salvador Perez is a little bit expensive to trade for as well, but almost everybody else on this top 25 is good. Personally, I think if you're not starting Hedges, Perez, Vasquez, Posey, Murphy, I don't really want to say Kelly because he's expensive to trade for as well, Molina or Sanchez, then you are not really playing it right. You should have one of those guys. And frankly, if you're not starting Hedges, you should be. I could kind of see somebody starting Perez or Vasquez, but if you're not starting Hedges, just pick him up. He is going to be well worth it for you. Great catcher. You could extend him very cheaply. He is a good long-term option as well. We've got a lot of prospects on this list. I'm going to be posting the link in the description, so if you guys want to check out the complete list, you can do so. I will be posting complete player rankings at some point, but since I was going over catcher ability today, I thought it would be a good idea to bring up this list. Now, I am waiting offense, people. Real Muto is where he is for a reason. He's very good defensively, but he would probably be in the Yadier Molina, Carson Kelly range if this was just defense. You've got guys like Christian Vasquez above guys like Yasmani Grandal because he's a better hitter and arguably better defense as well, but nonetheless, plenty of good hitting catchers in the top areas. Will Smith would probably be a good 50 points lower, maybe not that much, but he would be much further down this list if he did not have a good bat. I would also not consider Will Smith a viable option. By the way, he's much too expensive for what he does. So pick up one of these guys on the top of the list who is cheap. Honestly, Hedges and Perez, unless you're on a very tight budget, should be your catching duo. If you're on a tight budget, it should be Hedges and Mathis, or honestly Joseph, because he's very cheap to acquire as well. I like him at number 17. Yeah, plenty of cheap, excellent catchers to pick up here. Very easy position to fill to a high level. So I would definitely recommend taking a look at this list. It's rough, but it's going to give you a better idea than overall ratings or whatever. And yeah, this should give you a pretty good idea of who you're going to trade for. You could take into account cost of the player for trade and money as well. And I'll leave you guys to it. So I hope this was helpful for everybody. I hope that my tests on 22's catcher ability are going to be helpful. And I hope I will have the spreadsheet out sometime today or tomorrow, updated for 22 for defense. So we'll see about that. Yeah, I'll see you guys for that one.